We have another fireside chat, a very, very exciting one. Our host for this one, for the very special fireside chat, is award-winning investigative reporter and editor, currently with CoinTelegraph as editor-in-chief. We have Jed Cassano. Joining Jay is the co-founder and chief architect of the Stellar Development Foundation, an open network that connects the world's financial infrastructure. He created Stellar back in 2014 as an open source blockchain network built to democratize economic participation by making money more fluid, markets more open, and people more empowered. An early pioneer in decentralized systems and blockchain technology, he created eDonkey 2000, which became one of the largest file sharing networks in its time. He later created Mt. Gox, the first Bitcoin exchange. He is also co-founder of Ripple. He has devoted his career to developing and leveraging technology that promotes inclusion and transparency. Put your virtual hands together for Jed McCaleb of Stellar. Jay and Jed, welcome to BlockDown 2020. Take it away.
It's great to be here, and Jed, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks, Chris, for the nice intro.
I hope that our audience can't hear the ambulances here in New York, but to start with the obligatory question, how's lockdown going for you personally in San Francisco, Jed?
For me, I mean, I'm tired of not seeing my friends and things like that, but in general, like work-wise, it's pretty much business as usual for us. I mean, we've always been a fairly remote team, so we're still getting a lot of stuff done, but I think we're in a very privileged position. Obviously, it's affecting a lot of people a lot more than us. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we're similar at CoinTelegraph, been able to work remotely, and it's been pretty smooth. But obviously rough staying inside for a long time. There's been a lot of discussion in the crypto sphere about how this moment, despite all the tragedy, is sort of cryptocurrency's time to shine. First of all, we had an apparent change in federal monetary policy in the U.S., which was succinctly summarized by the Fed money printer goes burr meme that made the rounds. And there was also news this week that broke that banks are authorized to effectively intercept U.S. citizens' emergency paychecks and commit them to outstanding debts. So if those two things don't make the case for why we need crypto, I'm not sure what does. So I'm curious to hear your take on how you see this moment being important or not for crypto.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does like push a little more awareness out there to the general public that fiat money is maybe less sound than people kind of take for granted. But I still think in general that crypto really needs a way to be easier used by people out there in the world. Like, I think that's the big thing holding it back. It's not so much awareness. And really, I think it's not going to really take off until people kind of don't even really realize that they're using it. It just kind of becomes the easy way to do things or the better way to do things. And all of that is more like a user experience issue rather than like a technology issue. And so like we spend a lot of time working on those things. Obviously we care a lot about the core technology, but beyond that, you really have to make these things usable by people. And that's the big thing that has to change before crypto gets widely adopted, I think.
So you don't necessarily think it's going to be a problem for crypto if we don't see like mass adoption of crypto assets this year? It doesn't mean like, oh, Bitcoin failed or crypto failed.
Oh, no way. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to see more adoption this year, just like we've seen more adoption every year since
sure.
Announced, but it won't be, it's a long road. Like people take a long time to change their habits and the way they do things. And it's going to take a long time and people should be patient and be ready to celebrate this gradual progress that we're going to make over the years. So,
right. So what are some of those user experience obstacles that you see and improvements that you're working on that you think can help increase adoption of crypto?
So, I mean, us specifically, we're working on like a custodial, like a non-custodial wallet for people that can, it's mainly focused in Latin America. It allows them to do savings in dollars. Like in countries like, Argentina or definitely like Venezuela, where there's like really high inflation and people would rather hold dollars, and now a lot of people just store it in a mattress or whatever, or in like other domicile, like in other countries and stuff like that. But the app we're making just allows anyone just to kind of have like essentially what's a USD denominated bank account, and it's all powered on Stellar, and it's essentially a stable coin within Stellar that they use, and it allows them to convert between currencies, and it'll allow remittances, things like that. So it should just kind of really help the people there, like kind of avoid this rampant inflation. And I think stuff like that, where they don't really even know that they're using this crypto product, they just know that they're getting access to the dollar, stuff like that will kind of, it's kind of how you get people along on this journey. I think like again, I think they want to use stuff that they're used to. Like this is why I think this whole stablecoin phenomenon is pretty key. Is like people want to use like currencies and have things denominated in stuff that they're used to, like mainly fiat. And then from there, you can kind of lead them along the path of like, hey, there's other alternatives out there, other like things like Bitcoin or other digital currencies that you can get that are potentially more sound than fiat. So.
Right. Like how when people are using the web, they don't know that they're necessarily sending HTTP requests and all that stuff. They just, type in the web address and it takes them to the Facebook. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're going for. So, I mean, speaking of giving more people access to the dollar and a sort of crypto stablecoin based on the dollar and Stellar, there was, back when the coronavirus relief bill was working its way through Congress, there was a lot of talk of a digital dollar actually possibly being implemented by US Congress. What do you make of that kind of proposal?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read it that closely. I mean, I heard about it, of course, but, the dollar's already fairly digital, so I don't know what the meat of the substance of that like proposal was, but yeah, I mean, efforts like that, I think they're largely positive for the crypto space, but it's hard to know without knowing the actual details. I mean, stuff like that can go pretty wrong. It can like lead to, a government knowing like every payment you make in and out and things like that, which could be pretty, I think, bad for a lot of reasons. But at the same time, like maybe it makes it easier to get in and out of crypto, which would be good. I mean, I think ultimately, like a central banked currency is probably not something that people are gonna want, because I think it'd be very hard for governments to resist the urge to like track your every purchase, which I think would be bad. So.
Right, and if we end up with like the only cryptocurrencies out there are government issued stablecoins, then you're effectively living in a surveillance society.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that would obviously be quite bad. So, but again, like you don't know. Like maybe it will be surprising the governments will implement it in some privacy preserving way, which would be great. So,
do you think there's a way that government issued stablecoins can help with mass adoption of decentralized cryptocurrency?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of the issue with cryptocurrency now is just getting the money in and out of the system, right? So it's something that we kind of like. It's one of the founding principles of Stellar is like you need a bridge between like the traditional payment system and this crypto payment system, and to the extent that like these like central bank digital currencies, they can kind of become that because they're already in this digital format, and I don't know to what extent they're interoperable with the existing protocols out there, but if they are, then that's very easy to get in and out of these different things, which makes the cryptocurrencies themselves just much more useful.
So it's not necessarily like a winner takes all system. Like CBDCs and decentralized cryptocurrencies can coexist in your view?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's these things all get kind of lumped together, but they really are serving very different use cases. Mm-hmm. Like Bitcoin is a very different thing than Ethereum, and Ethereum is a very different thing than Stellar. And there's a reason for these things to all exist. Like they're solving different niches and different things that blockchain or like cryptocurrency can be used for. And yeah, so I don't think that's going to go away.
That's a great point that you raised, though. I mean, how do you conceive of the distinctions between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the Stellar?
Well, I mean, they're just serving very different purposes. Stellar, for instance, is really focused on being this like kind of universal payment network that's linking all the existing financial institutions together. It's sort of trying to be like the internet for money, right? Where you can represent any kind of asset, you can exchange these assets between each other, things like that. Bitcoin has like a much simpler and narrower use case where it's just kind of being the store of value that's censorship resistant and kind of free from coercion, right? Which is a legitimate thing to want, right? And then Ethereum is kind of this more open-ended, kind of distributed computing platform that you can use for lots of things, So it's sort of more this generic thing, right? So they just fit different roles, and I don't see a reason why they wouldn't all exist in the future. So.
Right. So, and, taking a step back and I guess sort of looking at your career in the crypto space specifically, first co-founding Ripple and then Stellar, it seems like there's a recurring theme of cross-border payments and financial inclusion in your work. I'm curious to hear how you think of your own trajectory, or what are the themes you'd say run through your work?
Yeah, so I think that's largely right. Yeah, I mean, I think when I first learned about Bitcoin, I got super excited, and I still think payments is the best use of this idea of a blockchain, and this idea of like this decentralized ledger that everyone can see, but no one can change arbitrarily. I mean, you can do lots of things with that, but I still think cross-border payments is like the clearest, kind of most impactful use case. And so like I wanted to focus there. And also just as I learned more about payments, I just realized how broken it is, and how again, there's all these different payment networks, but they're not connected to each other. Like if you have money at your bank, you can't easily send it to somebody that has money in on their mobile phone in Kenya or something like that. Like, but this isn't the way the internet works, right? It doesn't matter where your email server is. They all speak the same protocol, so they can send seamlessly between each other. And so Stellar has the same vision, where it's just, you want to make these things seamless, and as a result, I mean, it helps literally everybody in the world, because everybody pays for things, but it helps the people most left out of the system the most, right? So the people at the margins and the people that don't have bank accounts, and they depend really heavily on remittances, and right now they're getting like really, really screwed on fees and stuff. This helps those people the most. So that's that's kind of where the financial inclusion aspect comes in. Like, I mean, I want to build this thing that's universal and everybody can use, but ultimately it's going to do the same way the internet helped people that didn't have access to libraries before more than people that did, right? Like it helped everybody, but it helped the people that were less included the most. And the same will be true if we're able to make the internet for payments. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How does Stellar sort of go about its work then to target and focus on the problems most affecting the people that are most in need of greater financial inclusion?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we spend most of our time in the developing world, because again, like that's where money's most broken. So that's where the biggest pain is, and that's where it'll get adopted the first. Like even if it was really like, we just, I don't know, it's the right business decision, as long as the right moral decision, I guess. But so I think that's what we end up doing. So we do a lot of work in Southeast Asia. We've done a lot of stuff in Africa. We're doing, like I said, we're making this wallet that's focused on Latin America. So that's pretty much it. I mean, we just like try to identify where these problems are the greatest, and like say like, okay, how could Stellar or crypto in general like help people solve actual real issues and get people to really use this stuff? Because to date, I think that there's been kind of a very real lack of crypto being used by real people, other than for like speculation, which is fine. But I really want to see people's lives actually being improved by the technology. That's like a super focus of ours, and it's just clear that the developing world is where that's going to happen first.
And would you say that there are different challenges and obstacles facing people in Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, or that it's sort of universal challenges that you're addressing just in different geographies?
I mean, there's definitely different specifics of it. I mean, money is very local, and like people work with it in different ways, and so like there's different like kind of like on the surface there's different problems, and like the last mile of it is very different. But the overarching problem is this one of lack of interoperability. I think where like these different networks just don't talk to each other, and there's a lot of time and friction for like crossing borders and crossing between networks. And if you can kind of solve that, then a lot of things can fall out from there. So if you can just make these systems interoperable, then all of a sudden it just becomes much easier to do things, and like people have like greater access, and they can kind of start to like make the applications that are local to their own economies and communities that make sense for people in those regions, right? And so really the interoperability piece is the thing that we're trying to solve, and that's what Stellar's core thing, and just trying to apply that in these different geographies essentially.
And how do you decide what you're going to make interoperable? How do you pick the pieces of the puzzle and what standards you're going to converge on? And is there ever a time that there's something that maybe some people use, but you decide that it's not worth trying to make interoperable? How's your sort of workflow on that process?
I mean, it's a lot of, identifying what the problems are and like saying like, here's this remittance company, here's this other like mobile money thing, like, or here's like several mobile money operators. Like, how do we get them all to talk to each other? And basically that's just like, hey, you guys all get on Stellar and now you can talk to each other. It's kind of the story, but yes, I mean, because that's what Stellar is. Basically, it's this common protocol. So it's kind of identifying who are the players that need to be on this common protocol to create a more useful system than what is currently existing. So,
yeah. And how do you, sort of sell those players on Stellar as a protocol, as opposed to, any other sort of project that's working on interoperability?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's not that many that are actually working on interoperability. I mean, I think a lot of people have this vision. When we go explain it to these like remittance companies or mobile money things, they really like it. And at the end of the day, like if there was lots of people on the system, they would join up. But like I think this is the thing that's held back Stellar and really the whole crypto ecosystem is that it depends on network effects, right? Like the value of these systems just depends on how many people are plugged into it. And until you can get like a certain critical mass, it's just a very hard sell. It's one of the reasons why we decided just to kind of build our own wallet in Latin America is like, rather than like for years, we were just trying to convince other people to build on it. But we were like, well, we just need to build the first like kind of killer app and just kind of demonstrate why this is useful. Because it is really hard to get people to join a network that doesn't exist yet. Right. And I think we're kind of seeing, this is why like real use of crypto has been kind of overtaken. But I think we're getting there, and we're starting to get the kernel that we need to like kind of build out from. And like the flip side of this is like once you start to get a certain level of network activity, then it just kind of snowballs because it becomes more and more useful each additional partner that plugs in, right? So we're just trying to get to that phase, take a life of its own.
Right. It's interesting to hear you say that you work with remittance companies a lot, and that you're sort of getting them on board for this vision, because on the one hand, I would sort of think that, crypto being used for remittances could take them out of business, right? And that they want to keep their high fees, keep exploiting people on those transaction fees. How do you get them on board, and what's the relationship there like?
Sure. I mean, there's a long tail of remittance companies. There's really a lot in the world. I mean, I think Western Union and MoneyGram combined only control like something like 20% of the market or something like that. So there's really a lot of ones that you have never heard of. And most of those guys are actually also getting squeezed by like banks and other people that they have to send money through, and they don't have as much reach as they'd want. So really the pitch to the remittance companies is, you're going to have like a much wider path of distribution of people you can send money to, and like also that you can receive money from, because like if you're a remittance company that plugs into Stellar, say your main footprint is in Nigeria, right? And then some other company plugs into Stellar and they're in Japan. Then now people in Japan can send to Nigeria and vice versa, right? And you didn't have to do any business development or like strike any deals. It just kind of happens, right? And so that's very attractive. And the other thing is that they know they're not going to go away anytime real soon, because people at the end of the day want cash in these jurisdictions. Like if you're in Nigeria, you want, and someone sends you a remittance, you want cash. Like you don't want some Bitcoin or some weird thing, right? I mean, maybe at one point we will, but as I said today, that's still very years off. Like people want a physical thing; they don't trust these things yet. So they're really not in danger of being, disintermediated yet. I mean, they're still useful because you need this last mile issue.
So they're sort of happy to play along, and then they get to be in business for another 5-10 years, and
yeah, it's just a better rail for them. It's like better than using Swift or like better than using like other things. Like it's just a better rail. So.
Right. And then for you get to sort of build up the adoption over time, until we maybe and hopefully get to the point where people do actually want to hold Bitcoin or lumens or whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the wallet you're building in Latin America. Let's talk about specific projects in Southeast Asia. There was, I think, news a couple months ago. You just mentioned Swift, that there was a company, Lightnet, that's working to possibly replace Swift in Southeast Asia. What's their work there, and what's the relationship to Stellar as well?
Yeah, so we've been talking to those folks for a long time. I mean, it's kind of spawned out of this large Thai conglomerate. They have really ambitious plans. They're basically basically making this remittance network and mobile money network in Southeast Asia, and they're all building it on Stellar. So it's pretty exciting for us, and yeah, we're working pretty closely with them. I don't know when it's slated to actually like start having live transactions, but I think fairly soon here. But yeah, I mean, it's just the same kind of thesis where it's like these things were all kind of like disconnected before, and if you can put them on kind of this interconnected network where it can kind of bypass the traditional banking rails, then it just benefits everyone in the system, right? It just makes it where the transactions are faster, they kind of settle instantly rather than like in a few days. And there's just less cost and friction in the whole system, and not only that, but you can send to more people and receive from more people, so it's just kind of a net positive all around. So yeah,
again, makes perfect sense. And moving to another region, to Africa, we've also talked a little bit about Kenya. There was exciting news last month that multi-platinum selling singer and rapper Akon chose to launch his crypto asset Acoin on the Stellar network. And I think we had the opportunity to hear from Akon himself at BlockDown. But can you tell us a little bit about Stellar's involvement with Acoin and the vision there for payments and financial inclusion in Senegal, Kenya, and I suppose beyond in Africa?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking to Akon for a while also. His vision seems very aligned with ours, where he basically just wants to make a very positive impact, specifically in Africa, and he realizes that payments is particularly broken there, and his vision is a way to kind of like increase financial inclusion and increase like the people's access to the financial ecosystem, and we're very on board with that, obviously, and so happy to partner with them. It seems like they're making good progress with this city that they announced in Senegal and in Kenya. So we're super excited about it.
Awesome. Jed, thanks so much for taking the time to answer my questions. I'm sure that our audience has some more questions for you if we want to jump into a Q&A, but it's been great to chat with you.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thanks.
Guys, thanks so much. Jay, thank you very much for joining us, and Jed as well. And yeah, for sure, we do have some audience questions that we would love to go to. We'll switch to Jed, and we'll ask Jed some questions. All right, Jed. Listen, Jay, you did such a great job that you've taken a lot of the questions from the audience. So I don't know how many we have, but we're going to throw them at you anyways, Jed. So there's one person that says, I run a dApp on a competitor chain. What is your elevator pitch to build on Stellar as a dApp?
I mean, it depends on what you're building specifically. I think all of these chains have different trade-offs, right? That no one is like good for everything. Stellar's very good for representing any kind of tokenized thing, like a dollar or a euro, a bar of gold, in a seamless way on the network. And so if you kind of just want to represent something like a share of real estate or what have you, you can send that around inside the network, and it's super cheap and easy and quick. You can have it trade against other assets inside the network, and it just all that's built in. It's all first principle. It's not like some smart contract thing that you're going to have to build and be super complicated. And so it's just very easy for doing that. If you want to do more complicated things, I don't know, a prediction market or something like that, that would be very hard to do on Stellar. But if you want to do like the simple, just representing some value that exists in the external world in a distributed way, Stellar's just built for that. So you should probably use it.
Fabulous. Good answer. Okay, so if you can have one goal for Stellar to have completed by the end of the year, what would it be?
I really want us to get good traction for this wallet that we're releasing, and that's definitely the company's main goal right now. Is put this thing out there, get as many people as we can on it, and start proving out the value of the network to people, right? To make this network actually useful for real people in the world. That's definitely my number one goal for 2020. And
is that called the Stellar Wallet?
I don't think we've announced the name yet, but it's not going to be called the Stellar Wallet. It's actually done by kind of an independent entity.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to break that news right now on BlockDown 2020? I'm just kidding. I won't put you on the spot.
I do. Yeah.
You do, but you can't, right? Yeah. All right. You can tell me secretly after.
Maybe it's announced. I forget. So.
All right, cool. Okay, what was it that got you into decentralization as a concept? Was there a specific moment or situation that made you focus on the decentralized industry?
Yeah, I don't think there was a specific moment. I mean, I've always been kind of leery of concentrations of power, where I just think things often go wrong when power is concentrated in the hands of like just a few people. Like as they say, it corrupts, things like that. So I've always been interested in how you kind of break that down and make things just more decentralized and democratic and more of a level open playing field. Because I think that just anytime that happens historically, it's beneficial for society at large. So yeah, I've just always been super interested in that concept and work to make that happen.
Super. You've mentioned a couple projects, but which dApps and projects on Stellar right now are your favorite and you're most excited about? Maybe you can give a couple examples. I know you talked about a few.
Yeah. Let's see. Off the top of my head, I mean, we just announced an investment in this company, DStock, that's doing tokenized equities on Stellar. So, if you live in, like, say, Vietnam and you want to buy a share of Tesla, you can do that now easily through this app, DStock, which is super exciting and basically opens up the equities market to people all over the world, which it was very hard to get into in certain regions. So that one's super exciting. There's another one, Realty Bits, which is tokenizing real estate, shares of like houses. So you can buy like shares of property in like various places, and it's all like kind of represented on the ledger and tracked there, and makes it where it's tradable around and send it in. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure there's some others that are pretty interesting, but those are just a couple that are top of mind.
Those are both awesome use cases, and hopefully they get substantial traction and spread like wildfire. We have a couple more questions that we'll go to. So here's a cool one. Which cryptocurrency blockchain projects do you admire other than Stellar? And maybe why?
Right. I mean, I still really like Bitcoin. I mean, I think Bitcoin is still probably the one that I like the most, other than Stellar. I'm trying to think if there's others. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time looking at the others. There's just so much out there, and it's really hard to keep up with what's new stuff. I mean, I'm sure there are some very cool projects out there with like cool technology or cool ideas that I just don't know about. But Bitcoin, I like it just because it's very simple. It's very straightforward what it's trying to do and how it works, and it continues to like kind of just chug along and be Bitcoin, which is super cool. So yeah, I think that's still my favorite.
Super. I think most would agree with that one. Listen, Jed, thank you so very much for joining us at BlockDown 2020. We really, really appreciate your time. Obviously, exciting things going on with Stellar. It's always been a fan favorite from the very, very beginning. So thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you again soon, and look after yourself. Thank you so much, Jed.
Yeah. Having me. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, guys. Awesome. The show continues to go on. There's no end. We will be back after a quick break.